The second day after death, the visionary landscape of the Chönyi Bardo, a philosophical journey into consciousness, projection, and the luminous mind. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. In many cultures, death is treated as a boundary, a firm and irreversible line. Yet across the world's great spiritual traditions runs a quiet and persistent whisper: consciousness does not end. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, a text both mystical and surprisingly psychological, states this without hesitation. Even after death, consciousness does not cease. Today, I invite you to walk with me into the second day after death, the realm called the Chönyi Bardo, often translated as the Bardo of the apparent reality. This is the stage where the deceased encounters peaceful deities, wrathful deities, radiant lights, and terrifying shadows. But here is the profound twist. None of these beings are external gods. They are projections of the mind, shaped by one's karma, habits, desires, and fears. This is not mythology. It is a psychology of the soul. Before we begin, I want to welcome all new viewers. This channel explores death, consciousness, and the universal light that transcends religions and cultures. If this journey calls to you, I invite you to subscribe and stay connected as we continue unfolding these timeless teachings. Now let us begin our exploration of the second day. 1. The threshold between light and shadow. The first day after death, according to the Tibetan tradition, offers the deceased a chance to recognize the brilliant light of their own true nature. This is the primordial light, a flash of absolute clarity, which many Western philosophers might compare to Plato's form of the good, or what mystical Christianity calls the uncreated light. If the deceased recognizes this luminosity without fear, liberation is immediate. But most beings turn away, like someone waking from a dream, startled by a light. Too bright, the soul averts its gaze. And so we enter the second day. Here the light dims. A subtle silence spreads across the afterlife landscape. It is not the silence of peace, it is the silence you feel right before a storm. The brilliance of yesterday recedes like a tide, leaving the deceased standing in a dim, shifting space where shapes are uncertain and sounds echo strangely. What vanished? Not the light itself, but the deceased's ability to face it. 2. The imaginal realm, where mind creates reality. On this second day, the deceased begins to see forms, some gentle, others terrifying. These include the peaceful deities Jade Sun, the wrathful deities Krobo, radiant lights of 5 colors, shadows, echoes, and strange manifestations. In Western terms, this stage resembles Jung's concept of the shadow and the archetypal contents of the collective unconscious. It is as if the psyche, freed from the physical brain, projects its entire interior world outward into a vast imaginal field. This is expressed beautifully in the classical line, 心之所现，欢迎非真. What appears is the display of consciousness itself, a mere illusion, not an objective reality. This is the essence of Yogacara, the Buddhist mind-only school, which proposes that perception is always shaped by consciousness. We do not see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. In the Chönyi Bardo, this truth becomes literal. There is no external universe, only mind, unfolding itself, like a dream made visible. 3. The tension between awe and fear. As the deceased stands in this twilight space, a sound begins to emerge. It is distant at first, a low hum like the droning of monks chanting across mountains. Then comes the faint ring of bells, delicate, crystalline. The sound is mesmerizing, yet unsettling. The deceased feels 2 impulses. This is heavenly. Follow it. And no, this is a trap. It is testing your desires. This internal conflict is the essence of the second-day experience. It is not about heaven or hell. It is about recognition versus projection. The soul struggles to discern whether the phenomenon arises from its own mind or from some external authority. In modern psychological language, this is the moment when the self confronts its own unconscious material and is unsure whether to embrace it or flee. For the five lights of pure reality. Suddenly the dim landscape brightens. 5 rays of light descend from above. Blue, white, yellow, red, and green, each representing one of the 5 wisdoms and the 5 Buddha families. These lights are pure, gentle, and liberating. Yet at the same moment, 5 darker lights also appear. Gray, smoky, murky, manifestations of human desire, anger, ignorance, pride, and jealousy. The deceased is drawn to the darker lights because they feel familiar, comfortable, almost warm. The brighter lights feel too intense, too honest, too revealing. This is the drama of the second day. Will we choose the light that liberates, or the light that matches our old habits? In many ways, this moment mirrors the moral and existential choices of life itself. We often avoid truth not because we dislike it, but because it demands that we change. 5. The disappearance of yesterday's peace. The text describes a moment of poignant realization. The deceased glances back, and the pure light of yesterday is gone. It was not taken away, it was simply ignored, and thus moved beyond reach. This is a universal human experience. How often in life do we overlook a moment of clarity, a moment of love, a moment of awakening, only to realize later that it has already passed? The Bardo is not merely about death. It is a mirror held up to the living. 6. The atmosphere thickens. The space around the deceased becomes heavy, not like physical weight, but like emotional pressure. The ground is uncertain. Is it soil? Is it mist? Is there even a ground? This disorientation reflects the collapse of the physical senses. Without the nervous system to stabilize perception, everything becomes fluid, symbolic, and dreamlike. A Western phenomenologist might describe this as the world losing its intersubjective coherence, the dissolving of the shared reality that kept experience grounded while alive. The soul now stands in a world shaped only by its own tendencies. 7. The stage of projection, peaceful and wrathful forms. Now the visions intensify. Peaceful deities appear first. Serene, radiant, compassionate. But if the deceased cannot recognize them as expressions of their own mind, that serenity transforms, features distort, colors darken, faces twist into wrathful expressions. It is not punishment, it is not judgment, it is the mind struggling to accept its own truth. This is why the Tibetan masters insist, do not be afraid. Nothing here can truly harm you. You are witnessing your own mind. To the Western listener, this may recall the mystical insight of Meister Eckhart, who wrote that the soul encounters God only after passing through its own darkness, or the Hermetic maxim, as within, so without. In the Bardo, this is not metaphor. It is literal. 8. A turning point in the afterlife journey. The second day marks a threshold. Yesterday offered liberation through recognition. Today offers liberation through courage. If the deceased can face the projections without fear, even the terrifying ones, the illusions dissolve, and the underlying luminous nature reappears. If they cannot, they are drawn deeper into the cycle of delusion, toward the later stages of the Bardo, and eventually toward rebirth. This is why Tibetan teachers urge practitioners to become familiar with their own minds before death, not to escape death, but to avoid confusing one's inner landscape. for an external reality in the Bardo. 9. Understanding the second day through Western eyes. For Western audiences, the Chönyi Bardo can be understood through 3 complementary lenses. 1. Psychological, a confrontation with one's subconscious projections. 2. Phenomenological, an experience of pure appearance without physical grounding. 3. Ethical and existential, a mirror showing us how our choices and emotional habits shape our perception both in life and beyond it. In this sense, the Bardo teaching resonates with Socrates' claim that the unexamined life is not worth living. The Bardo insists, the unexamined mind becomes your entire reality after death. As we stand here, metaphorically walking beside the deceased on the second day after death, we are not merely learning about an ancient Tibetan text. We are learning about ourselves. We are learning that fear, desire, and projection shape our reality more than we realize. We are learning that clarity requires courage. And we are learning that the light, our true nature, never disappears. We only turn away. If this journey into the nature of consciousness resonates with you, I invite you to subscribe and continue exploring these teachings with me. Together we walk not toward death, but toward understanding. The second day after death, choosing between light and shadow. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. In our previous session, we began exploring the profound landscape described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, a text that insists with remarkable clarity that consciousness does not vanish with death. Rather, it continues into a series of transitional states known as bardos. Today, we continue into the second day after death, the realm known as the Chönyi Bardo, or the Bardo of apparent reality. This is the stage where the deceased encounters luminous beings, terrifying forms, and lights of overwhelming intensity. But here is the key truth. None of these are external gods or devils. They are manifestations of one's own consciousness, shaped by karma, memory, desire, and fear. Before we dive deeper, a warm invitation. This channel explores consciousness, death, the afterlife, and the universal principles that connect East and West. If these themes speak to you, I invite you to subscribe and walk this journey with us. Now let us enter the second day. 2. The voice of the blue light. On the second day, a voice calls out from a radiant blue light. Fear not, this blue luminosity is the light of truth. It is the radiance of the Dharmakaya, the body of reality, and it will wash away your anger and ignorance. Come forward. But the deceased trembles. The heart races. The blue light feels too powerful, too honest, too overwhelming. Then, a soft, gentle gray light appears to the side. Warm, comforting, familiar, it seems to whisper. Come here. This is the light of the world you knew. Your family, your home, your desires. This is the light you belong to. The deceased hesitates. A subtle inner voice whispers, the strong light will blind you. The softer one will bring peace. And the soul steps back. The blue light begins to recede. The gray light fills the space like a fog. And then like thunder splitting the sky, a voice roars. You have chosen ignorance once again. The blue light disappears. Here, the Tibetan text describes something profoundly human. We often turn away from truth, not because it harms us, but because it exposes us. We prefer the familiar illusion over the unfamiliar liberation. 3. The procession of peaceful deities. Now the landscape shifts. Where the blue light once stood, a golden light rises warm, majestic, transcendent. From within this radiance emerge Samantabhadra Buddha and a host of bodhisattvas carrying lotus flowers, their faces serene yet brilliant. Samantabhadra, known in Mahayana Buddhism as one of the 4 great bodhisattvas, embodies the vows and practices of all Buddhas. He represents universal compassion and the active commitment to liberate all beings. And he speaks, "Return now. This golden light is the light of compassion. If you release your greed and anger, you may attain liberation. Here and now, their faces are beautiful, but that beauty is too intense, too revealing. It feels as though every fault, every unspoken desire, every moment of selfishness is suddenly visible. The deceased turns away. In that instant, the peaceful faces change. The compassion fades. Their expressions distort. Eyes turn red. Faces multiply, twisting into wrathful forms. And they proclaim, 'Because you have turned from truth, we now appear as the darkness within your own mind.' The sky shakes. The ground splits. The deceased begins to fall into the chasm. This is not punishment. It is psychology made visible. The peaceful deity becomes wrathful not because the deity changes, but because perception changes. Because fear transforms the same reality into a different appearance. 4. A question for the modern mind. At this point, we must ask a profound philosophical question. If the Bardo visions are real, do they appear identically to everyone? Buddhist, Christian, Muslim, and atheist alike. The Tibetan Book of the Dead insists that these visions are universal, not cultural, not religious, not symbolic. They are what consciousness experiences when freed from the physical body, like dreams that become the entire sky. But if this is true, then a Christian, a Muslim, or a secular humanist should experience the same luminous beings, though perhaps interpreted through different symbolic frameworks. This opens a fascinating dialogue between religions. Let us consider how the second-day visions might appear to 3 individuals. 5. If the deceased was Catholic, a devout Catholic might not see Samantabhadra or the blue Dharmakaya light as a Buddhist image. Instead, the overwhelming blue light may appear as the Gloria, the light of God's presence, the radiance described by mystics like Saint Teresa of Avila. The bodhisattvas may appear as angels, or as Christ in his transfigured form, radiant beyond bearing. And the gray light, perhaps it appears as the familiar world, the earthly attachments the gospel warns against. The voice saying, "You have chosen ignorance," may echo Christ's own words. Light has come into the world, but men love darkness rather than light. 6. If the deceased was Muslim, a Muslim may experience the radiant light as the Nur, the divine light frequently described in the Quran. The peaceful deities may appear not as Buddha figures, but as angels, particularly the recording angels, or the figures described in eschatological traditions. The overwhelming clarity might evoke the Quranic scene during the last day, when all illusions fall away, and the gray light might be interpreted as the comfort of worldly desire, the dunya, the lower world that distracts from God. 7. If the deceased was an atheist or materialist. This case is the most conceptually fascinating. An atheist may not interpret these phenomena religiously at all. The blue light may feel like a breakthrough of pure consciousness, a hyper-lucid state, like the clear white light reported in near-death experiences. The peaceful deities may appear as archetypal forms, figures of the psyche, symbols of integration or transcendence. The gray light may feel like the gravitational pull of old memories, the fading comfort of identity. The voice may register as the internal conflict between clarity and self-deception. And for the atheist, this moment may not be a religious revelation, but a psychological confrontation. 8. The universal mechanism beneath cultural filters. Thus, the imagery may change, but the structure remains the same. A bright, liberating light, a softer, familiar light, an invitation to awakening, a retreat into comfort, a distortion caused by fear, a descent into darkness, a new opportunity for recognition. In this sense, the Tibetan Book of the Dead offers not a Buddhist doctrine, but a universal map of consciousness, a phenomenology of the afterlife that transcends religious boundaries. It presents a mirror. What appears in the Bardo is what lies within ourselves, and that is why the second day is so crucial. It is the moment when we decide, consciously or unconsciously, whether to move toward liberation or deeper into illusion. If this journey into the second day of the Bardo has offered insight, if it has expanded your understanding of consciousness, or if it has opened new questions about the afterlife, I invite you to stay with this channel. Subscribe, join our community, and continue exploring these profound teachings with us. Our journey continues, and the next stage of the Bardo awaits.